Hello, everybody. It is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, the last Wednesday of May. How is that even possible that the year is almost half over? I don't even get that. I know I have this issue with understanding time, apparently, but man, this time seems to go fast these days. Let's put it that way. But I thank you all for being here. This is another edition of Women in Business. And today we are going to talk about mental health. And I'm going to talk about some tips for maintaining good mental health. And honestly, I got to tell you, the last couple weeks have been rough for me in the mental health area. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's the mess that our government is at the moment. There's rising prices and inflation. There's climate change. There's the awful things that happened, like monkeypox apparently is showing up, and the horrible school shootings and the supermarket shootings and the racially motivated crap. And you start looking at the world after a while and you go, man, we're kind of screwed right now. And then if you have mental health issues or challenges, or you're dealing with mental illness of some kind, that can exacerbate the fact that the world looks pretty dark and a little scary right now. So I thought this was a good time to talk about this kind of stuff. And this is Mental Health Awareness Month or Mental Health Illness Month. I'm not sure which of those it is, but it's definitely a good time to talk about mental health. And we know this is something that I deal with and a lot of people I know deal with. And I think it's an important thing to talk about. I've always said, and I always will say, I think we should talk about this stuff a lot more than we do, because part of the reason that dealing with mental illness is so hard or so difficult is because we don't talk about it. And some people make people who are dealing with mental illness challenges feel ashamed of what's happening or what they're dealing with. And that's totally wrong. And I'm assuming anybody who's watching this knows this. I hope that's true. But let's say hello, Cindy. Thank you for being here. Tanya, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I'm going to also remind you all, since I do let people know about sites or organizations that I think are worth supporting. Right now, this month, I've been promoting the 19thnews.org, a great news website. They have a wonderful newsletter. They cover gender-based issues, women's issues. They do a lot of talking about threats to women's rights, things like that. I highly recommend going over there and subscribing to their newsletter. If you can afford it, donate and support them. All those things are very important. But we have, as ever, limited time. And as you can hear, a slightly limited voice. I did a lot of camera work yesterday and I did a lot of talking. So it's going to be a little raspy today. Sorry about that. That's just kind of how it goes some days. But I want to talk about some tips for taking care of your mental health, protecting your mental health, and some tips for perhaps dealing with any issues you might encounter in that area. For those of you who may not be familiar with the show or who have not paid breathless attention to every word that I've ever said, though why would you not? Please, pearls of wisdom here. But anyway, I deal with depression and a little bit of anxiety, and have for most of my life, and didn't understand what was going on for a long time. Finally did and have gotten some help for it. Don't take medication for it, but more because that's never been an optimal solution for me than because I'm against it. I think if medication helps you, please do take it. Mine is mostly talk therapy and just honestly at this point, experience. I've dealt with how my brain works long enough that I now am pretty expert, I guess is the word I want to use, at figuring out when my brain is trying to mess with me. And that's helpful. But the first thing that you always should do and need to do if you're ever in a position where you're having issues, where you're depressed, where you're dealing with anxiety, where you have suicidal ideation, where you're, whatever it is, get help. And we stigmatize getting help a little bit. It's like if you're depressed, you should just gut your way through it, or, fake it till you make it, or whatever people say, which makes me want to just punch them all in the face, which I understand is not a good response. But here's the thing: when you're depressed, or when you're dealing with anxiety, or when you're dealing with suicidal ideation, it's not something that you can just say, well, I'm going to feel better now. It's not really under your control. It's chemicals in your brain a lot of times that are messing with you. And there are ways to manage those chemicals. You can manage them with medication. Sometimes talk therapy helps. Sometimes, soothing rituals or stims or something like that'll help. You need to figure out what works for you. And I think the one thing you need to remember is there is no shame ever in getting help. And people who shame you for that, or make you feel bad about it, or tease you about it, or give you shit about it, or whatever it is, I'm sorry, but fuck them. That's the only word I can say. That's the only thing I can say, because you are important and you deserve to feel the best that you can feel. And if something is stopping that from happening, then you deserve to get the help you need, whatever it is, whether that's medication, whether that's talk therapy, whether that's journaling, whether that's yoga, whether that's exercise, whether that's, whatever it is. You deserve to get the help you need to feel better. And why people feel like that's a weakness, or why that's something that people should be shamed for, I don't understand. Where we got this theory that you have to tough everything out. My analogy is always, it's like if somebody shoots you in the leg and then somebody says, well, get up and walk. You should be able to tough it out. If you have a bullet in you, you go to a doctor and you get the bullet out. If you have a clogged artery in your heart, you go and have an operation and get it cleared. It's the same thing with mental illness. If your brain is messing with you, you go and find the help to get it fixed. That's what's important. And Tanya says, there is none at all, and things can change over time. Therapy for the first time this year, it helps. And yes, and I would agree, there's no shame in it, and attitudes can change. But what you have to do is put yourself first. And especially for women, that can be really hard. The old analogy, and I'm sure everybody's heard this 5 bazillion times, but I'm going to say it one more time. If you were on an airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, you put your own mask on first, and then you can help other people. If you're always trying to help other people and saving yourself for last, then you pass out in the aisle somewhere and you're no good to anybody. It's the same thing with mental illness. If you're dealing with anxiety, if you're dealing with depression, if you're dealing with suicidal ideation or bipolar or schizophrenia or whatever it is, get help. Do what you need to do to be the best version of yourself you can be, and the happiest version of yourself you can be. And I'm saying this like it's really easy. It's not, because I know from experience, when you're in the middle of a depression, sometimes the hardest thing in the world to do is to talk about it, to get out and talk to other people about it. That's so difficult. And when your depression is telling you that you're worthless and you mean nothing, and why would anybody waste their time on you, holding a hand up to say, somebody please grab this and keep me above the water so I don't drown, is very, very hard to do. But it's necessary. And even if in this moment, your brain is telling you that you're not worth it or you don't matter, please know that you are, and you do. You're important. People need you here. So get help if you need it. And I will, at the end of this, show some websites that can potentially be that source of help for you. But please, if you need help, get help. So, and I just turned off my banners. The next thing that you need to do is have a safe space. When I was a kid, my house was very chaotic and there was a lot of fighting and yelling and crying and all sorts of stuff. And so my house was not a safe space, but the library was a safe space for me. I could go to the library and I could get a pile of books and I could sit and read and it was quiet. And there were rules that you couldn't yell. And there were rules that you couldn't stomp around. And there were rules that people couldn't bother you. So I spent a lot of time at the library and I spent a lot of time reading. I think my safest space has always been books, honestly, because I could isolate myself and get so into the book that I didn't notice really what was happening around me. Not the best coping mechanism, maybe, but one that was very valuable to me at a time when I really needed to be out of the situation I was in and couldn't always physically make that happen. So books were my safe space. Now, probably my house is my safe space. I mean, I was just thinking about this before we started today, that I kind of did a little centering exercise before I came up here to go live. And it's raining today, and I love the sound of rain. It's very soothing to me. And I went downstairs and I sat in my living room, and it's kind of dim because it's raining and it's cloudy. And I just sat for like 10 minutes and just listened to the rain and kind of closed my eyes and just kind of got myself in the right frame of mind to come up here and talk to all of you. And my house is a safe space. My house, honestly, almost nobody gets in the door of my house. My house is my space. I'm very choosy who gets to come to it. I'm very choosy who gets to be inside my home because I didn't control any of that stuff when I was a kid. And now that I do, it's my space and my atmosphere, and I'm going to keep it the way that I want it. Not everybody does that. And some people are very energized by having people visit their homes, and they love to open their home to people all the time. And if that's you, that's great. And maybe your safety is having a bunch of people you love around, and that's great too. The thing is, it doesn't matter what your safe space is. It could be in a boat on a lake. It could be skiing down a mountain. It could be walking on a trail in the woods. It could be your bed. It could be the restaurant that you love. It doesn't matter what the thing is. It just matters that you have a thing. You have a space that is safe for you, that is rejuvenating for you, that is regenerating for you, that you feel good about when you're in it. That's what's important. And if you have that space, then you're in good shape, really. I mean, and I think for a lot of people, especially people who may have childhood PTSD, or PTSD, thank you, childhood PTSD, or people who grew up in really chaotic homes when they were kids, people that grew up with a lot of trauma and drama and yelling and fighting, or alcoholism or whatever it is. There's something to be said for having a space that you control. That was one of the things that, if I think back to my childhood, that was one of the things that I remember most, is how out of control everything felt. And I am, and maybe this is not a surprise to some of you, I'm a person who needs a certain level of control. I don't like being out of control. I don't like it when things are out of control. I like things to have order, and I like things to have structure. It's just something that makes me feel a little safer. And I think that's the optimal word in this. Your space needs to be something that makes you feel safe, whatever that is. And sometimes having a space that you control is something that gives you that feeling of safety. So it doesn't matter, like I said, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be, another word for it might be, find your happy place. Find the place that gives you joy, whatever it is. But when you're dealing with mental health issues, having a space where you can safely deal with those issues is huge. And having a space that maybe reinforces positive feelings is huge. But your safe space is also the place where you can deal with the fact that you're feeling depressed, or that you're having anxiety, or you're sad, or you're kind of thinking maybe it's worthwhile to check out today, or whatever it is. And I don't mean to make light of any of those things. I'm just saying, have a place or places where you can safely deal with these feelings without being criticized, without being yelled at, without having anyone try to jolly you out of it, without having anybody give you crap about it. So wherever your safe space is, it should be an accepting place too. And never knock the value of acceptance, because having someone in your corner that understands what you're going through, or no, not understands, because people can accept it and not understand it necessarily. Someone who accepts what you're going through and supports your efforts to get better, but allows you to live it in whatever iteration you might need to live it in that moment, that's a value beyond price. And if you have someone like that in your life, keep them around, man, because speaking as someone who did not have a lot of those people when I was first trying to deal with my issues, it's rough. It's really rough. So if you have people who support you and help you and allow you to be who you are on any given day, keep those people in your life, because they're part of your safe space and they're hugely valuable. And I wish there were more people like that. The next thing, this is one that is so hard for me, I have to say. Give yourself a break. And by give yourself a break, I mean this in two senses. One is physically give yourself a break. If you're trying to work and you're just depressed and you can't, or your anxiety is so bad that you can't go to the meeting you need to go to, then give yourself a break and don't do it. Or if you're really bummed out and you're feeling bad because you haven't washed the dishes, or the house is a mess and you feel horrible about it, or whatever it is, give yourself a break in that sense, because you're dealing with what you're dealing with right now. And sometimes you only have so much energy and you only have so much ability, and there's only so much that you can do, either because of motivation, or because you're just sad, or you're scared, or whatever it is. So give yourself a break if you aren't maybe covering all the tasks you should be covering, or you feel like you should be covering, or you're not doing everything you think you should be doing. The other way you should give yourself a break is just emotionally and mentally. I tend to beat myself up a lot for things. I tend to beat myself up for if I think I said the wrong thing to someone, or if I'm having a bad day and I don't get to something that I said I would do, or I feel like I should buck up and I should be tough and I should be able to deal with this stuff. And how can I go on camera and talk about all this stuff when I have days when I can't fix things for myself, or I have days when I'm sad, or I have days when I have anxiety, or whatever it is. And so there's a very evil little witch who lives in my brain who likes to say nasty things to me, basically. And a lot of times I will beat myself up over things that honestly are not particularly in my control. And it's just how it goes some days. It's part of the mental illness that I deal with. And I need to give myself a break for those things. I need to stop telling myself that I'm being self-indulgent and that I'm being wimpy, or I'm being dramatic, or melodramatic is what my parents always called it. I need to stop using those words about myself, because this is a real thing. This is a real thing that happens to people. And it's not something I caused. I'm not being dramatic in hopes that everybody's going to come hold my hand. This is a thing. And if you especially if you grew up in a household where your difficulties were not acknowledged or made fun of or discounted, those voices will sometimes play in your head. And when they do, it can be really hard. So we all need to be a little kinder to ourselves, and we all need to stop holding ourselves to impossible standards, because what happens is then you're just making the situation worse. And you're also hurting yourself even more than you're already hurting. And that's not fair to you. It's not fair to you as a person. And it's just awful, honestly. So try to be kind to yourself and try to be accepting of your own needs and the fact that you're dealing with your own set of requirements because of the mental illness that you have. And sometimes that's hard to do, because if you've been told for years and years that you're dramatic or you're exaggerating or you should just buck up and be happy or try to think more positive or whatever it might be, then you can really internalize that, I guess is what I want to say. And it becomes part of the tape that's in your head. And this is not the universal sign for crazy. This is supposed to be the sign for this is the tape running in your head. I realized as I was doing it, I'm like, that's probably not the best thing to do when I'm talking about mental illness. But seriously, you need to give yourself a break. Even if nobody else will, you need to give yourself a break, because the tapes in your head that are telling you that you're worthless or you're being self-indulgent or you're being dramatic or whatever it is are tapes that somebody else probably put there. And if it's in your head, you can reprogram it. So do that, because you are worth it. And whatever you're going through is a legitimate thing, and you deserve help to manage it, and you deserve to treat yourself with kindness. So please do that. And I speak this as the queen of the people who are hard on themselves and who never give themselves a break about anything. I remember stupid crap I did 30 years ago, and I still beat myself up about it. So my brain is a fun place. Let me say that. So moving on. This is one that I have just stumbled on, I have to say, in the last 3 or 4 years. And I always was kind of like, what does it matter? And now that I am paying much more attention to this, it matters a lot, honestly. It really does. It can be a huge help. And I was always very, very anti-exercise. I didn't like it. I didn't like to sweat. I felt like I wasn't coordinated. I didn't care for most forms of organized exercise. I still will not exercise in front of anybody else. It's very, very unlikely that anyone will ever see me kickboxing or doing whatever other forms of exercise I do. That's something I do myself because of a lot of reasons I'm not going to go into here, but I have issues with how I look when I exercise. Let's put it that way. But anyway, I started exercising, and I started exercising mostly because I had some increased problems with my heart. And one of the things my cardiologist said was, try to exercise more. You need to drop some weight, which I did, and you need to do more exercise. So I started exercising, and I've been continuing it. I try to do something 7 days a week. I don't always manage it. Some days are just too busy, but I try really, really hard to do that. And honestly, the benefits have been enormous. I sleep better. I feel better. My heart works better. I manage stress a lot better. I manage anxiety a lot better. I think my depressions are maybe a little lighter, possibly. That the jury's still out on that one, but exercise has really, really helped. And I mean, just from sleep alone, because I am a veteran insomniac, I have never, ever, ever been a good sleeper. I don't sleep well. I don't sleep long. I don't fall asleep easily. And since I started exercising and got on a sleep routine, which that's kind of a side note to this. If you can develop a sleep routine, do it because, oh my God, it helps so much. And I was kind of like, what does it matter? But I really did I try to go to bed at the same time every night. I try to wake up at the same time every morning. I have a little routine I do before I get ready to go to bed where I ban most social media and I ban news and I try to do something that I think is soothing and it helps me fall asleep and sleep better. And honestly, my sleep in the past probably 9 months has been the best it's maybe ever been. And I was always a dedicated night owl, and I always thought that it didn't matter when I went to bed and when I got up. And then I started being pretty strict about going to bed a little earlier and getting up a little earlier, and it helped immensely. So go figure that one, but it helped for me. And exercise also, it helps me sleep more deeply, helps me fall asleep more quickly, makes me more tired, helps with my anxiety. I highly recommend it. And I understand that if you have chronic illness or, physical problems, exercise may be tough, but there's still things that you can find to do. I know our friend Kylene Montgomery has her Rise and Shine yoga and she does chair yoga. So if you have physical issues that might keep you from doing more strenuous exercise, you could try that. I know that I use a site called Daily Burn, which has a variety of exercise routines, programs you can do. And they also have accommodations for people who, have knee issues or low impact options and things like that. So there are ways that you can exercise if that's something that you want to do. And Jane says, exercise and eating well is very important. Totally would agree with that, Jane. And as far as eating well, I was an emotional eater for years and my physique showed it. I basically went through most of my childhood and young adulthood and even my 20s and most of my 30s eating my feelings. If I was angry, let's have some cake. If I was mad, let's eat a pizza. And a lot of that was because when I was growing up, expressing my feelings was not acceptable. So I ate because I had to do something. And that was a coping mechanism that I took with me for a long time. And food became my outlet. If I was mad, I'd eat. If I was sad, I'd eat. If something was happy or we wanted to celebrate, let's go eat. And as you can imagine, eating a lot and not exercising does not lead to, the best physique, let's put it that way. So part of my recovery from the things that I deal with is I had to learn how to eat better, which is make better choices, which is watch my portion control, which is not make food my go-to emotional management tool. Of those three, not making food my emotional management tool has been the hardest by far. Making better choices, actually not that tough. I discovered that there are recipes for things and ways to cook vegetables, and that I can make substitutions for different things. And there are a lot of ways to eat much more healthily that are very tasty. And portion control, you can use smaller plates, you can use smaller bowls, you can get educated on what a reasonable portion is, and then make sure that you divide things ahead of time so you're only getting a reasonable portion. And that's actually not that hard to do. If you have special dietary requirements, which I do because of my heart, I have to watch salt. I have discovered that if I limit carbs, it's much better for my weight and I actually feel better. So I don't do keto but I try to keep carbs I try to be relatively aware of the carbs that I'm eating. I have requirements from some of the medications that I'm taking that I have to avoid certain foods or limit certain foods, all that kind of stuff. So there are things that I have to do to maintain optimal health. And it takes a little time and you have to think about it. So yeah, are there days when I'm like, man, I wish I could just go out and get a bag of Doritos and a 6-pack of Mountain Dew and then have a pizza and, top it off with ice cream. But not something that I can really do anymore. Not to say that occasionally I don't, but for the most part, I try to be sensible about what I eat. I try to be sensible about the portions I eat. I try to make good choices. Not to say I don't splurge sometimes. Not to say that sometimes I say bag exercise and I just lay on the couch and watch Netflix all day. I don't think anyone is perfect. I don't think anyone is always on point with this stuff. But if you try to be on point more than you're not, if you try to exercise in some form more days than you don't, if you try to pay attention to your portion size, and if you try to pay attention to what you're eating more often than you don't, and if you pay attention to how you're dealing with your emotions, and if you're using food as the way to manage your emotions, find another way to do it. And that's, like I said, that's not easy. That's probably been the hardest thing for me because part of what food did for me was deaden my emotions. If I was sad and I could eat, a pizza, then for whatever the reason, that made the sad less powerful, or it gave me something else to focus on. How it works, I don't really know, but it did. It at least kept me functional. But the thing about keeping me functional is it also kept me much over the weight that I needed to be healthy. So it was not a good solution. So these days, what do I do instead of eating my emotions? Journal sometimes. Sometimes if I'm really angry, I'll do kickboxing, which can be a really nice workout when you're angry because, man, you put a lot of oomph in those kicks and those punches. Sometimes I'll get a pillow and I'll whack the bed and just yell a little bit. Sometimes if I'm sad, I just cry, and I have a safe space to do that, going back to the safe space thing that I was talking about earlier. So I can feel my emotions now, and they're not going to be used against me, and I'm not going to be criticized for it. And that makes all the difference. Am I like super good at it? No, I'm still not. Feeling emotions is not my best thing sometimes. And that's as honest as I can be, but I'm learning. And I think that's all that you can do. So if you are using food to stifle your emotions, that's something that you need to get a handle on because it's not healthy for you. It's not healthy for you physically, and it's not healthy for you mentally, because if you're not feeling and processing and dealing with your emotions, then you're going to have problems. So you need to do that. You need to be able to process your emotions, feel what you feel, act on them however you need to, and move on. So exercising and eating well, both very important things. And honestly, tools that were not in my personal arsenal, say that fast 3 times, that were not part of my mental health routine, let's say, until relatively recently. But now that they're here and I can see the benefit, I totally recommend it. And I'm not going to say it's easy. I mean, changing habits of a lifetime and finding ways to do these things can be difficult, but the payoff is totally worth it. Next thing I want to talk about: maintain a schedule that works for you. And if that means that you work from 10 o'clock at night till 2 o'clock in the morning, and that's the schedule that works for you, do it. Now, I fully understand that if you're working for someone else, or if you're working in a business where you have clients and the clients maybe aren't going to want to contact you at 2 in the morning, then there are parameters that you're going to need to figure out. So It's an issue sometimes, and it's something that you need to figure out over time. And honestly, for years and years and years and years and years, I worked on somebody else's schedule for most of my life. And now that I have a schedule of my own, I'm finding there are some elements of the schedule that I used to work on that I really like. And there are other elements of the schedule that I can now adjust to fit myself that are just heaven for me. I tend to work in blocks of time. I tend to be most creative later in the day. I tend to sometimes do my best thinking between like 8 and midnight. It's just how it works for me. So my schedule is partly dictated by other people and partly dictated by me. And that's a good mix for me. But it also is something that you need to look at. If you work for someone else, you need to be prepared and willing and ready to say, I need a mental health day. I'm having a rough day and I need to take time to get my head back in the right place. And having worked for people where that was not an option, I will tell you how valuable that is if you have a boss or work for a company that understands that and accepts that. And I'm not under the illusion that everybody is going to be able to dictate their own schedule down to the microsecond. I understand that people have families and spouses and significant others and jobs and commitments and volunteer things that they do. And so there may be a lot of demands on your time. But in as much as you can, try to schedule things to work the way that you work. And also try to have the ability to adjust your schedule to whatever your mental health may be that day. Because I can tell you when I'm in the middle of a depression, there are things that are just stuff I can't cope with. There are things that are just not going to happen because my brain and my emotions just won't let them happen. So those are the days that I'm really happy that I work with people who I can say, you know what, I'm really having a bad day. Can I get back to you tomorrow with that? Or I can just say, you know what, my deadline's 5 days away. I can take today and just be a couch potato if I need to, or just sleep, or just do whatever it is that I need to do. So I understand that everybody has demands on their time, but I also think you have the right to say, I can't do that today. You have the right to say, I really need to just be quiet today, or I really need to just sleep today, or, I'm having a really hard day. I need to go talk to my therapist, or I need to journal for an hour, or whatever it is. So, and I don't think that's a wrong thing to do. And I don't think that's a self-indulgent thing to do. I think we need to do more of that, honestly, because we tend to look at the time in our lives as being owned by other people, that we always have to be available and that we always have to be serving others and that we always have to be maintaining this image of ourselves as these productive go-getter, burning up the pavement kind of people. And I don't understand that, honestly, because yeah, I want people to think that I'm smart and productive and capable and all that stuff. But at the same time, you know what? I'm smart and productive and capable. And I also deal with depression and I have a heart condition. And there are days when life is just a little on top of me. And I'm not ashamed of that. And if there's a day when life is on top of me and I need to take a day, then I have the right to do that. And I don't think that makes me any less capable or smart or funny or, someone you want to work with or whatever it is. And if it does, then honestly, you're not somebody I want to work with. So, Here we go. So I like these comments here. Yosta says, good on you. Putting words on it is really big. I'm so happy for you. Thank you. And then he also says, Peter Sage says, be the main one in your life instead of an extra in someone else's. Sorry for my spelling, but I hope you get it. You did great. And he's totally right. I like that. Be the main person in your life instead of an extra in someone else's life. And if you're the main person in your life, then you realize that what you need matters. And you realize that what you are going through matters. And if you need to take a knee for a minute so you can get through whatever's happening currently, then you should be able to do that. And if you work in a different way than most people, then own that and try to schedule your life in such a way that you can do that. You know, one of the things that I took crap for a lot when I was growing up is that I need a lot of quiet time. I need a lot of solitude in my life. And not because I don't like people, it's just that I tend to be very other focused. And when I'm with other people, all my concentration and all my energy is on being entertaining and listening to what they're saying and supporting them in whatever they're doing. And it gets really exhausting. And I feel other people's emotions quite a lot, which also can be really exhausting. So there's only so much of that I can do before I just need to have my quiet. And if you grow up in a family of extroverts who thrive on people and don't really experience other people's emotions or understand them, maybe, though maybe that's unfair. I don't know. But they didn't get that. And so I got a constant stream of, you know, why are you such a lone wolf? And why are you so dramatic? And blah, blah, all this stuff. And it was more that they just didn't get that I operated differently than they did. So now that I have the ability to have a space where I can go and be alone and recharge my batteries, it's wonderful. And it makes so much difference because now when I'm with people, I'm fully recharged and I'm ready to go. And that is huge for me. And that's just part of my makeup. That's just part of who I am. And, you know, now that I understand that and I know that, it makes a huge difference in how I feel when I do have to be public because I've had the time to recharge my batteries. Helps immensely. Next thing I want to talk about, stay in the present. This I'm laughing at myself because a lot of these today are things that are tripping points for me. This is one too. I think I referred to it earlier. I will beat myself up for things that happened when I was 7. I have a tendency to not as much as I used to, but there was a time in my life when I would go over every bad thing that had ever happened to me, everybody who was ever mean to me, everybody who didn't like me, whatever it was, and mull over it and think about it. And I go over every stupid thing I ever did, and every time I was a dork, and every time I tripped over my own feet or said something stupid or whatever it was. And I would bring it up and bring it up and bring it up and bring it up. And here's the thing. Once something's gone, it's gone. You can't fix it. You can't change it. You can't make it be different. It's over. It's done. There's nothing else that you can do with that particular thing. So why go over it again? It's history. And honestly, worrying about the future never changes what's going to happen. You can worry all you want about the test that's coming up or the medical procedure you're going to have or the person you're going to meet or the show you're going to go to or the talk you're going to give or the client you're trying to secure or whatever it is. It's not going to change what happens unless, of course, you worry to the point where you don't sleep and you screw up your presentation or whatever it is. But worrying about something isn't going to make that thing not happen. And it's not going to change it. It's just going to steal the joy in the present moment. It's just going to add to the anxiety of the present moment. So it's not something that you need to do. Stay in the present, stay in the moment you're in, experience whatever's happening in that particular moment. And this is a hard, and like I said, I'm the queen of beating myself up for things that happened a gazillion years ago. And I also used to be the queen, well inherited, because my grandmother, who I adored, was a worrier like nobody in the world. So I got that gene from her, apparently. And I used to worry about everything all the time. What do people think of me, and what's going to happen, and what if this thing happens? And it doesn't help that I'm a writer and I have a very good imagination. So I can imagine horrific scenarios like you can't even believe. And all it did was make me nuts and make me anxious and make me fearful. And honestly, when the bad things happened, worrying about them never made them not happen. And it's kind of spoiled some stuff that could have been good or better, because I worried so much about it that by the time I got there, I couldn't really enjoy the experience. So stay in the present. Stay in the moment you're in. Don't borrow trouble. Don't screw yourself over for what you think you did wrong. As I said earlier, be kind to yourself. One of the favorite things that some people will do, me being one of them, is you'll do something and then you'll go back later and you'll pick out everything that you did wrong and you'll just beat yourself up over it. For the first like 6, 8, 10 months that I did these shows, I could not go back and watch them, because the only thing I would notice about the show was you rolled your eyes too much. You moved your hands too much. You sat funny. You said something stupid at this point in the show. Oh my God, how could you have done that? And I really had to work on myself. So now I can actually watch myself and go, hey, you were not bad. You were pretty good. And that's the first reaction I always try to have is, okay, here's the stuff that I really liked and I thought you did well. And then maybe I go through for a second watch a couple days later, and then I'll say, okay, so overall you did really well, but here were maybe the 3 things that you could have done a little better. That for me is a quantum leap in self-liking, self-kindness. I don't even know, self-esteem. I don't know how I want to term that, but I was the queen of you suck and you're horrible, and why would anyone ever want to listen to anything you have to say? So to be able to watch myself on camera and not be super critical is huge. And part of that is staying in the present, is just watching the video to watch the video and watching the video to appreciate what I did well. And when I'm doing the videos now, I'm staying in the present. I'm just sitting here talking to you guys. I'm trying not to think about, how do I look? Is my necklace crooked? Do my earrings look funny? Is my hair funny? Am I flushing? Are my eyes, did I roll my eyes too much? Am I talking too fast? Am I talking too slow? All those things. I try not to do that. I just try to concentrate on the words that I'm saying and the fact that hopefully I'm giving you some information that's helpful. Some days I'm better at that than others, but that's Yosta again. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why they named it the present. Yes, there you go. I like it. And the next thing I want to talk about, if you are dealing with mental health issues, one of the ways that you can maybe help yourself is by helping others. And I understand that if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, that maybe you're not going to be able to sit with somebody and talk to them. But maybe you can make gifts for a charity, or you can volunteer to help a website that needs some office help, or maybe needs a website built, or a charity rather, that maybe needs a website built or needs office help. You can, donate food to a food pantry. There are things you can do that don't necessarily require you physically going somewhere and physically doing something. But helping others can be a huge benefit to you, and not just in feel good endorphins, but it takes your mind off your own problems and lets you realize that other people have problems too. And not to say that people who have mental illnesses are self-absorbed, because that's not what I mean at all. But when you're in the middle of something and you're trying to claw your way out of it, you can get a little bit self-focused. So sometimes taking that focus and putting it on someone else can be hugely beneficial. Same thing with talking about whatever your experience is. I have to say, when I do these shows and the shows that I've done in the past, part of the reason that I'm doing them is because it helps me, because I went through some stuff. I have some knowledge to share. And if I can share it with you all and feel like maybe I'm getting a nugget of information out there that might help somebody, that helps me enormously. It makes it a little less painful to have dealt with some of the things that I dealt with. It maybe gives it a purpose. And I'm not a huge subscriber to that theory, but at the same time, yeah, if I can say, okay, at least I can share this with other people and help them, there's some benefit to it. And honestly, helping others just makes you feel good. And don't knock that, because if you're in the middle of a depression, getting a little endorphin boost is a good thing. So definitely consider that. If you're dealing with mental health issues, try to help others in some way. Donate money to a charity, give to a food pantry, volunteer, talk about your experiences, whatever it is. Find a way to help other people. The last thing, practice gratitude. And I used to scoff at this one so much. I was always like, oh, geez, it's the positive people again. It's the positivity police. But you know what? Finding things to be grateful for and finding things to be happy about and focusing on the good, especially when you're dealing with dark a lot, when you're dealing with the darkness a lot, can help you immensely. So practice gratitude. Find ways to practice gratitude. Keep a gratitude journal. Kylie Montgomery, again, apparently this is the day for me promoting her stuff. She does a great show on her weheart.biz Facebook page every Thursday, where she talks about gratitude. And it's a lovely little show, and she talks about different ways to practice gratitude and different things to be grateful for. And that's on her weheart.biz page on Facebook. You should go check it out. I usually try to drop in almost every week if I can, just because I think it's a beneficial thing to do, and we can all use a reminder to be more grateful for the good things in our life. And honestly, when you're in a dark place, when you're feeling scared, when you're feeling sad, remembering that there's things to be grateful for, even if it's just, I had a really good piece of chocolate, or the sun is really pretty today, or I like listening to the rain, it's very soothing. Any of those things can just remind you that everything is not darkness. And sometimes knowing that can be a huge thing. So be grateful for what you have to be grateful for. And everybody has something, even if it doesn't feel like it. So try to find that thing. And then before we go, I just want to point out a few organizations. The National Alliance of Mental Illness, NAMI, has a website at www.nami.org, NAMI.org. And they have a lot of resources for people who are dealing with mental illness, for ways to deal with mental illness. They have resources for people who might be trying to help someone who's dealing with mental illness. So check them out. There may be some things there that can help you. If you are dealing with suicidal ideation, or you're feeling like or you know somebody who might be dealing with that, you should check out the suicidepreventionlifeline.org. They also have a 1-800 number you can call, but check these people out if you're dealing with suicidal ideation, because we need you here. And I know what that's like, and I know how dark that can go. So if you're feeling that, if you're worried that you might hurt yourself, or if you're worried that someone you know might hurt themselves, go to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, get some help, see what the resources are available. And then mentalhealth.gov, you can find some governmental programs that perhaps could be helpful. I'm not a huge advocate of government programs necessarily, but check it out, see if there's things there that can help you. And honestly, the big thing is if you're dealing with a mental illness, talk about it, reach out, let people know what you need and how they can help you, and share your experiences, and share that you're having a bad day, and share that you're having anxiety or whatever it is. And never, ever be ashamed of that, because it's not something that's in your control. It's part of your brain's makeup. It's part of your body's makeup. It's just a thing that some people have. And we aren't ashamed of having colitis. We aren't ashamed of having heart conditions. We aren't ashamed of having migraines. And mental illness is just another form of illness. So don't be ashamed of it. And thank you, everybody. This went a little longer than I thought it would. I guess I had more to say than I thought. Who knew? And I have to tell you, for those of you that have been listening to me week after week drone on, next week we have a guest. Christy Burcham from Bernina will be joining me here on the show, and I'm so excited. And I'm also talking to a bunch of other people, so I'm hopeful that we'll have a lineup of great guests so that you guys can listen to someone else talk instead of me. But thank you all for being here. As always, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for the comments, and I will see you all next week as soon as I hit end broadcast. Bye.